Everyone, welcome back to more Flesh and Bad, and today we have a very exciting video. So we actually are doing a VOD review today. Not the VOD review that I guess I was talking about last video, but we're doing like a tournament VOD review. And this one is from Kai Sickler. So Kai Sickler, I think, actually went all the way to first seed in the latest AG Open Series, which is very, very exciting. So I wanted to do a little bit of a VOD review of, I guess, the AG games that we saw on stream. So I think there are two of them, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll double check that before I guess the video goes. But anyways, the first round I think we have here is between Marlynn Toughnut. I think generally pretty favorable matchup for the Marlynn side, but we'll go and see. I think it is like definitely like losable though, depending on how kind of high rolly the Toughnut deck gets. Like if they just send like 13, 13, 13, 13, could definitely be a little bit difficult. But on the whole, I think pretty favorable matchup. So let's go ahead and kind of take a look. I'm also going to be doing this at like 1.5 speed, just so that it's like a little bit faster than just like the normal kind of game pace. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so they're going to go for the fist bump here, and let's take a look at the hand. So it looks like we have Sift, Portside, Eye, and Catch of the Day in the opener. Okay, so pretty mid hand, and then it looks like the Toughnut is on the play here. So in this like first hand, it's actually like a little bit unfortunate because I think as Marlynn, you kind of want to just like block a bit. You have Eye in the opening hand, but you can maybe just like high roll off Quiver with Eye. So it's like actually kind of good potentially to have Eye in the hand. I guess we'll kind of see like what ends up happening here. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like 12 to 13 damage on the Toughnut side, depending on how good their hand is. So we'll go ahead and see what the Toughnut kind of sticks together here. All right, Toughnut is starting with a rip off top here, so just trying to get a little bit of extra +3 value, pretty good. All right, pitching the dig in, so going to be coming in for up to what's going on here? Gonna be coming in for 9 if I'm not mistaken, with the no whatever. Or the no hero stands alone or something like that. Okay. So 9 damage, not too bad. Or 10 damage, I think, from the gloves here. Yeah, so Kai could just like block 9 here. Or no hero stands alone. Okay, that is the card name. So Kai's just gonna block 9, which is like pretty reasonable here. And then I imagine he's just gonna try to YOLO off the Quiver with the Eye. I mean, Quiver Eye is like kind of nutty here, so I would not be surprised if we do actually hit an arrow here. Right, let's take a peek. Seems like we've hit at least something here. Or maybe top one, bottom one. All right, Shallow Water off the top. Not too bad. I mean, starting the game up a card is pretty good, even if it's just a random arrow. Random arrow, always super good at the kind of early stages of the game. Okay, it looks like Toughnut's just going to go ahead and pass it back. Okay, and then in his hand, it looks like we have an Ataya here, Cheating Scoundrel, Swell, and a Gold to Tip, which is actually really nasty. If he hits off the Swell here, I think that's going to be a ton of damage. So the only thing that's weird is you got to play around Fleshback, though. Huh. This is kind of an interesting line. I feel like there are a couple things you could actually do here. Like maybe just play like Gold to Tip to make a gold. So you go like up to 2 golds, pitch Ataya to Swell, and then if you do get Fleshback, it's like not even that bad. I think that's okay. So hold on, let me see if I can try to predict the line here. So I think I'm guessing what Kai's gonna do is gonna play the Gold Tip because that like gives you just like net gold, and all you really care about is damage this hand. So if you don't hit off the Swell, it's like kind of fine. And then you can basically do 3 with a tie on it into 8, threatening the hook, which is pretty solid. Could even hook the Swell if you potentially wanted to, which is kind of annoying for the purposes of like the toughness token. That's actually like kind of an interesting line. I'm kind of curious to see what line Kai takes here, because I think the line that I immediately see is like try to bait out the Fleshback early. But yeah, let's unpause and see what Kai does, because I'm very curious. I feel like there's a lot of actually different ways you can potentially play this hand. Okay, so he's starting with the Swell, but what is he pitching? Okay, maybe doing another think on that. Okay, he's going to start with the Swell, so this is interesting. So he doesn't opt to play the gold to tip, which I think is like reasonable. The only downside is you could get intimidated away, but like it actually doesn't matter all that much if you do just get the flashback out. I mean, like regardless, you're still getting the ability to send 8 over or send 8 non-overpowered. The only question I guess, like if you hold the gold to tip, I guess that does give you an out to like not having to crack gold to make the extra resource or something like that. Kind of an interesting line. Let's see if this actually ends up baiting out the flashback because I'm kind of curious. All right, blue head off the top is very, very good here though. Yeah, I'm very curious to see if this actually just eats a flesh bag. It might not, to be honest. All right, closing chain, playing out the gold to tip. So I think this ends up basically being the same regardless. Like he basically like did it the opposite way I would have done it, but like this is still like kind of fine basically because you still get to like gold to tip, make the gold, and then potentially threaten hook. So it's still really solid. You're sending 12 damage here, which is really good, or like 15 damage turn cycle turn one. And then we're pitching the cheating, which is like also fine. Yeah, I think I don't mind this too much. There is like a line where you try to like crack gold to maybe like try to keep cheating as an arsenal, which is like fine, but like also has like risks. So I think I like don't mind this all that much. Like 15 damage turn cycle threat or creating one gold and threatening another, I think is like real solid. Kind of just a really good starting turn. Really can't complain about just having like 15 damage basically. Right, Thick-Hide Hunter, which is not going to fully cover this here, so the hook should still be kind of hitting through here. So really good. So yeah, really nice like tempo start for the start of this game. Okay, and we drew 3 oak, 2 shallow waters, and a tipple. Okay, very interesting. I kind of think I would maybe want to try to block with one of these shallow waters on this next upcoming term, just so that we kind of have the ability to. Okay, maybe there's not actually. Okay, the tough nut's actually not going to be sending anything. Interesting. Huh. Okay, he's just gonna Arsenal pass. Sure. Okay, so that's really good for us that the tough nut didn't actually like get to do anything that turn. So I guess now what you could potentially do is like get a little kick. So okay, interesting. What you could actually do on that hand, since you have like 2 yellows on that hand, 2 shallow waters and a tipple, is you could like pitch one of the shallow waters to discard the other one. That being said, I think you do want to probably like hedge around the fleshback still, which is going to be like a little bit annoying. Because if you do like get a fleshback on the tipple, then you like lose potentially one of the arrows, or you like lose the 3 oak, which I think is a little scary. So I think what Kai's probably going to do here is like tipple, pitch, discarding the goldfin, which I think is like pretty reasonable. I don't think you actually need to like discard the shallow water there. I think if like fleshback wasn't there, I kind of like the idea of just trying to like find any other random non-shallow water arrow. Shallow water is like it's like pretty good here though, because like Toughnut does, I guess, have an arsenal. I'm sure this will actually probably work out fine. All right, so discarding the goldfin, resetting that gold, really good. All right, it looks like you drew into a trophy shot as well. It's going to be a little bit awkward on this hand, I think. All right. Oh my god, blocking with the Buckwild, that's kind of crazy. Wait, why are we hold on? Why are we blocking 3 on a tipple? Okay, that's very strange to me, but maybe it just makes sense to like get out of cards out of hand or something. Very interesting. Okay. But we still at least get to send another 9 here, which is pretty solid, and then just like set up the shallow water. What we could have actually done there is like overpitch the swell. It kind of depends like how greedy I guess you're feeling with the swell. The swell is really good, and I will have tunic up on the next turn, so like tunic swell's pretty decent. I think I don't mind keeping the swell there. It seems fine. I think it depends like how desperate of a situation you're in, because like if you don't need to necessarily like overpitch, or like if you don't need to find like a 3 oak super fast or whatever, I don't think it's like necessary to pitch there. just like potential options. All right, so it looks like we're now going to give the fridge here, which is reasonable. All right, and there will also be the flesh bag as well, but it looks like we're just skipping the flesh bag trigger. Okay, no, okay. We caught this flesh bag trigger. Cool. Which doesn't really matter much here because we're under 3 oak, but good practice at least. Okay, so the fridge is out of the way, and that's really good for Kai, I feel like. Okay, and pretty solid hand. So we have Swell, Blue, a Cheating, and a Kraken in hand, and Trophy Shot in Arsenal. So if we hit off that Swell, that hand is going to do so much damage next turn. I think if we don't hit the Swell, though, it's like a little awkward. You might need to end up like cracking a bit of gold to try to like dig for, I don't know, like big buff or something. Or like a 3 oak or something like that. But it looks like we're just going to send in Rock, so not too much damage being thrown. The fridge being out of the way is like a pretty big deal, though, I feel like. All right, but this next hand's really good. I think it's like a little bit worse if we don't end up hitting on that Swell, but I imagine Kai's just going to rip it here. Swell has just been like kind of actually overperforming for me lately, which is kind of crazy. I think the card is like definitely a little bit of a high roll card, but like the reward is like so good, right? Just getting like 2 free resources off of a card in hand is really good. All right, we're gonna start with the trophy shot, which I think is reasonable, kind of just inform what the next few cards are. And I'm glad we didn't play the Swell first because it looks like we drew a gold to tip. Now, what are we doing with the rest of these cards? There is like a line where you potentially go for like a Goldfin turn, but I don't actually think you necessarily need to do that just yet. I almost like the idea of just like gambling here off the Swell and just if we hit a blue, I think we're just like super far ahead. There's like some merit to like discarding the Kraken here. If you discard the Kraken, like load the Goldfin, then you can like gold to tip it. But I think it's like pretty reasonable to go for like a grade line here of like Swell into Kraken or something like that. Like worst case scenario, you can even just like you don't even need to necessarily overpower, but we'll see what ends up happening here. Okay, we do hit the blue, which is really good. So now we just get to send basically 17, which is kind of crazy. Or basically like 20 damage turn cycle, right? Because we're doing 17 plus 3. It's crazy good. Yeah, trophy shot and swell are just like so busted. When you like draw the nuts off a trophy or swell, it's just like so crazy. All right, going for the overpower makes sense to me. Now we're just casually swinging in for half our opponent's life total. All right, like the hook there because there's no way that this is not hitting, right? 70 to overpower is a little bit too much for, I think, Tough Nut to block. I think it's like theoretically possible if they have like thick Hide Hunter plus like no hero stands alone and some fridge maybe, but like otherwise I think this is almost guaranteed to hit. All right, so how much is our Tough Nut opponent taking here? They go down to 17, and then we get wait, did we miss a gold? Hold on. We had started at 2 gold, so we have 3 gold in total. Okay. Just making sure we didn't miss a gold there. All right, no hits, but that's still a-okay. The Tough Nut opponent notably can just do like a Buck Wild into Rock Swing, which is a little scary, but like we still just have like a pretty decent like life and tempo lead. But the next hand is also like a 17 damage hand, so we have Codex, Cheating, Big Game Trophy Shot, and a Bluefin Harpoon, looks like there. So this is going to be, I imagine we're going to be popping a decent amount of gold next turn. Yeah, so I think on this hand, I would basically just say like no blocks and just take all this damage. Don't think there's necessarily any real incentive to block because our hand probably will end up converting this turn. There's like some argument to maybe just like folding the hand and saying like, okay, can you present this much damage again? But I think that that hand ends up converting reasonably well, so I'd probably try to keep it. Ooh, and the red Buckwild hit off the top is kind of gross. Okay, so that is going to deny the rock swing, which is pretty brutal. I feel like the tough nut draws have not been particularly good, but that is how tough nut goes, I suppose. I'm going to start by cracking some gold. Makes sense. Crack some gold before the trophy shot just to see what's going on. Okay, looks like he doesn't even want to go for the trophy shot, which is like reasonable here. You basically just have 13 damage codex. I think this is actually maybe an opportunity. So we're sitting on 4 gold, which I think is like a decent amount. It kind of depends like how greedy you're feeling, because I feel like 4 gold can definitely turn into like an easy +4 there with the trophy shot. It kind of just depends like how greedy you want to get with it, because I think depending on like the draws, there are worlds where you don't end up getting to play the codex out, which is like negative value. Like you're kind of still getting like 17 value here anyways, if you count like codex draw as maybe +3, but like that's kind of a little bit dubious. I think there's like a line there where you do try to just like go greedy on the trophy shot and just end up trying to send an extra +4, but I don't know if you necessarily need to like risk it in this scenario since you're not like that far behind. I feel like I don't mind this play. I think it's like a little bit of a safer line. Like it doesn't open you up to having like the risk of like just bricking off like a bunch of reds or whatever, right? But I do think that there's like some upside here that potentially you could try to go for, given that you are sitting on like just a ton of gold right now. But I think I don't mind this line. All right, so let's see what he gets. I think he's just gonna get a Kraken. Yeah, makes sense. All right, 13, not bad. I'd even say you can like probably hook this. Your tough nut has 3 armor plus 1 toughness, so max they're going to be blocking like 10 if it's like a thick hide hunter or something. All right, vigorous smash up. So we're going to be pondering into a red lore, which is pretty sick. So that actually might end up hitting something in their graveyard if they have like a red Buckwild or a I forget what the other card is, the other red that tough nut sometimes plays. But red lore is actually probably not bad, especially now that we have Sea Lace kind of still up. All right, putting our tough nut opponent to 8, so the tough nut is definitely in a bit of danger here. All right, ponder into the red lore, which I think is like, I think it's like fine given that we have a ton of gold and we also have Sea Lace up, so like we don't even necessarily have to like overpower it if we don't want to. All right, next hand is a little bit awkward. So I think we saw 2 red harpoons and 2 blue harpoons. So there's a line you could do here where it's like red lure, go again, but don't overpower it, and then you like crack a bunch of gold to like load King Shark and then send King Shark for 10. I think that's reasonable. It depends like what is the red in graveyard, or if there are any reds in graveyard, which I haven't really actually been keeping track of. Okay, let's see if Kai gives us a look here. So there's red Buckwild, it looks like. Oh, and Jaws of Victory. That's the other one. Okay, so Kai can actually reasonably just like get a random red card to kind of like throw at the end here. You will need some more resources to do that, though. You need at least 1 extra resource if you want to pitch the shark, but I don't think you ideally want to pitch shark. I think you ideally want to try to like arsenal it. So we might be cracking a couple gold here, it kind of looks like. It's at least what I would do. Alright, looks like he's just going to eat the rock here. So life totals are like evening out a little bit, but like Kai still has a bunch of armor to work with, and then also tempo here, which is the most important thing. Alright, so we're gonna go for at least, I'm imagining we're going for at least 2 gold cracks here. It depends if he wants to pitch the King Shark here, which I think in my ideal world, I would try to like hold on to it for Arsenal, because King Shark I think is pretty good against Tough Nut on the whole. So it looks like he is going to go for that line here. Okay, he finds the blue, which is really good. So we get to Sea Lace and then just do Red Lure into Jaws of Victory, which I think is probably going to be the line. All right, then we get 2 floating there. That looks good. So yeah, not too bad here. If this hits, then you just get an extra like +6, and then you get to Arsenal King Shark, which is super good. There is even a line where if you don't hit, you can just like load King Shark and then just send an extra 6, but that's like a little bit suspect given that Tough Nut kind of just like wants to block with their hand anyways. Or for what it's worth, I do think that the Tough Nut opponent did like whiff on a couple of the rock swings, but I don't think it actually really mattered. Like it mattered in terms of like the life totals, but I think like Kai would still be like at least a couple points ahead, even if one of those rock swings hit. But yeah, sending extra 6 here is pretty nasty. It's probably gonna buy at least like 1 card from the Tough Nut opponent here. Okay, looks like he's gonna give armor, drop down to 2. So I don't really see like a real way out of it for our Tough Nut opponent here, unfortunately. Like I think this is just kind of like a bad matchup, is my opinion. I think the Tough Nuts can definitely like get there if they just see like all their go against horses at the right time, but like I feel like you're definitely putting a lot of like the burden of winning the game is kind of on the Tough Nut opponent basically. Like their deck has to like kind of function perfectly in order to get there. But if it doesn't, then it's just like so much worse. All right, looks like Kai's got a really good hand here. So 3 blues and a 3 oak here. So what I imagine he's probably going to do is just throw a couple cards in front of the rock here just to kind of stave off a bit of the damage. And then I imagine he's probably just going to like do blue, like pitch a blue to 3 oak, or maybe even crack a little bit of gold to see if he can find a buff. I'd probably try to block with at least the sunken and at least the hook here. I think it's also pretty reasonable to just like hold on to 2 blues here, so you don't have to use the 3 oak if you don't want to. Seems fine. There's no like real incentive to block here other than to just like kind of outmath your opponent. But like Kai's so far ahead, it doesn't really matter at this point. He probably just wants to try to like close the game out. All right, so looks like we're cracking a gold. Maybe try to find a little bit of a buff here. All right, going down to 2 gold, drawing a card. All right, looks like we like kind of bricked here. All right, going for 1 more draw. Yeah, this is like a little bit of an awkward spot to try to use the gold. Like this is almost why I wanted to like just block a bit last turn, because I feel like we saw like a decent number of buffs early game, but like cracking gold there maybe doesn't like give you that many more chances at a buff, which is kind of interesting. So I think if you're like trying to take a line where it's like the optimal line in kind of like the middle of the game, you probably end up just like blocking with at least like 2 cards there, and then just like keeping like 3 of plus blue, because like that's probably good enough to just send 10. Like the this is like a fine play if you're just trying to like close out the game, but if you're trying to take like the value line or whatever, blocking there I think is like the easiest way to just get 3 value, and then you just like kind of can stay ahead with 3 oak basically. But I think this is still fine. Like we're getting to the point where the game is almost over, so like Kai can basically do kind of whatever he wants here, and it won't really matter. All right, looks like we're maybe going for a port side here. Looks of it. All right, going for the port side, discarding the gold pin, so we'll remake that gold. All right, drawing into a tipple, which again is like not super helpful right here. All right, we're gonna crack 1 more gold. All right, he's going all in. Yeah, the gold cracks here are just like, I think he's just trying to find something to like kind of close out the game, but he's not really like hitting anything, which is like kind of to be expected. It's definitely hard to like utilize. Like basically, I think we started the game with like 5 gold or something, and then we just kind of blew it all on one spin, which I think is like fine since the game is gonna close out here anyways. But yeah, this looks pretty good. So we just get to send at least 10 here, and then just like Arsenal Codex. Not too bad. Yeah, Kodak's pretty decent arsenal, but unfortunately this hand just like didn't convert more than 10, which is unfortunate. I think it's definitely like a little bit hard to use like that much gold. Um, like try to actually get the value out of that much gold. Like sometimes it's better to kind of like distribute the value of gold over time as opposed to like trying to pop it all in one turn. But I don't think there's like any real downside here because I think we probably still win the game anyways. Okay, no hero stands alone is a little bit suspect though, so I think this could potentially cover. Oh, and then I think the no hero stands alone revealed a non-attack on top, so it didn't actually get the trigger. Is that how that works? Oh no. Uh, that's unfortunate. Wow, the top side opponent just like had terrible top decks there, or like top of decks there. But I think like if they hit that, maybe there's some way they can string together 13. Like I don't, maybe Kai wasn't like fully out of the woods there, but I think you can just like give Sea Lace and Tunic and then like keep it a 5 card hand still, or like a 4 card hand with Arsenal. So I think like overall it didn't really like the whips were brutal here, but I don't think they actually ended up mattering all that much over like the course of the game. I think like or basically would have been just like -7 damage, and then this one could have been like +6. I think is that how that works? I'm not 100% sure. I need to read No Hero Stands Alone again, but that whipping is pretty brutal. All right, so pretty good first game. So I think like nothing too crazy this game, just like some cool swell lines, and then also just playing against a pretty favorable matchup, I think. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the next game. All right. So Kai made it to first seed basically after that game. I think he went basically, I think undefeated in Swiss, or maybe I think basically undefeated in Swiss, which is pretty impressive. I think he also beat Colin at one point, which is super cool. So this is the bracket, and I think obviously we see at the top that like Marlynn, Vincent, pretty favorable matchup, and then between the next round, like between top 4, I think I'd rather probably sit across from a Pleiades, depending on what the build of the Pleiades is. Like if they're fatigue, I think it's like pretty favorable for us, depending on if they're aggro, it's like a little bit more suspect. So I think like between like an aggro Pleiades and like just a normal Acilia, I think like these are both like pretty reasonable matchups. I do think that currently the Marlin build is a little bit more geared to try to beat Arcane Acilio, and I think Moises here is actually on like non-Arcane Acilio, which should be a little bit more interesting. But yeah, pretty good, actually good bracket. I think if you like dodge, I think Betsy's a little bit of a rougher matchup if I'm being honest, but I think if you like dodge Betsy, like pretty much everything here you're kind of decent into. So pretty cool bracket actually. So I don't actually think we see, unfortunately, the first round of top 8 between Marlin and Vincent, but I do think that eventually Kai and Acilio end up playing. So let's see if we can actually fast forward to that game. All right, so let's get into the Acilio game. So this should be a little bit of an interesting one. I think that in general, the like not like it kind of depends like how you're boarding, but I think that in general, the non-arcane Acilio is like sometimes a little bit more difficult for us. It depends like if you're actually able to scout it out, which it seems like Kai maybe has the info on because he's running Trench plus Quick Dodge, which I think makes sense if you know they're on kind of like the non-arcane Acilio. So it should be an interesting opener here. Looks like in Kai's hand we have a few blues and then a saltwater swell from the looks of it. So he could be looking to just send a bunch of damage here, which I think is like pretty reasonable. So cracking the gold to draw a card, draws a gold to tip, which could be fine, could also be kind of mid here. All right, going for the Yellowfin, which I think makes sense into more of a non-arcane Acilio. All right, getting 3 resources off of the port side is really good here. All right, looks like Moises is maybe opting to just throw some equipment in front of the swell, which is really interesting given that this doesn't really have like an on-hit or anything. So kind of surprising to see that we buy equipment on the swell, which is like a little bit weird. All right, now Kai is going for the hammerhead. Now the question in here is whether or not he's going to hook. And I think most of the times in this scenario, you're like supposed to hook just because like you don't put your opponent on having like double D react or something. So I think I don't mind the hook here, but I think what actually Moises could have done is like held back the boots block and then just like kind of blown out the hook for like 11 here basically. Because like not being able to block the one means that the hook stays around for the rest of the game. It also means that you're giving Kai gold, which is like really brutal. But also covering 10 here is like not that bad. Kind of a little bit of unfortunate variance, I think, from Kai's side, but it's like understandable, I guess. Like I think some Acelial deck lists do still just run like D-Reacts and stuff, so definitely a little bit scary. And actually, here's an interesting question. So Kai is first seed, so he gets to actually pick who goes first and second here. If you're playing into non-Arcane Acilio, I think you're supposed to go second. Is that right? I think second into non-Arcane Acilio is maybe correct, but it kind of Yeah, I'm kind of actually wondering why he chose to go first if you know that the Acilio is on gone in a flash. That's actually kind of interesting. I think given that this is a more tempo matchup and that if they're playing like less arcane spells, like putting them on first means that you can like start the game with tempo, which is like pretty impactful. So I don't really love like giving Acilio just like the first 4-card hand here, but it kind of depends like again what their build is. Like maybe we didn't expect the Acilio to also be running D-Reacts, and then it makes sense to maybe put them on first so you can just like leak a bunch of damage. So pros and cons, I think, of first and second here. It very, very much depends like how much Kai was actually like able to scout here. But looks like we're starting with the Sigil Brilliance, which is pretty rough, and then going for like E-Strike draw card, it looks like. So 9 damage hand that also like draws 2 cards, pretty good. It looks like Kai. Okay, double block on the E-Strike there is interesting. Huh. So the hand is really rough for Kai's side. He has like cheating blue and a gold. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Or what is the blue? The blue is Sift, it looks like. Oh, it's a tie. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So that makes sense why we didn't block. But yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that there's no way to like load there. Because it was what were the blocks? The blocks were gold to tip and looks like a Sift. Is there a line we could have done there? It's like hard because like you could theoretically block with like Sift or like not say no blocks and then like try to sift a Goldfin into your arsenal or something, but that always feels like so bad. I think I like the line of just like blocking here, but this is like kind of the reason why I think you would ideally not want to go first into this list. It's just because like the issue is that if they're running D-Reacts, then you're like not leaking damage, which is pretty bad. And then if you're like giving them tempo to start, it's like also really bad. So we'll go ahead and see like how this ends up going. But I think that like kind of just having a turn where you pass here is just like not what you want to be doing into Acilio. I think it's like also just like a little bit of unfortunate variance on Kai's side because like he didn't draw Harpoon there. He could have like tried to YOLO for it, but that's also a little suspect. All right, next hand looks at least a little bit better. So I think I see a King Shark, a couple blues in hand, and then a Sunken. Well, we are staring down basically a 5-card Acilio hand because one of the cards is a D-React. So I think the play here is we're gonna try to block with Sunken Treasure, just to, like make another gold, and then like play cheating, pitch blue to crack gold, try to draw either like a blue or a yellow, and then we get to send 13, which is really good. Banishing the Sigil Brents makes sense just in case they are running what is that card? Like etchings or the one that like buys back like sigils. I don't even think they're running that card anymore, as far as I can tell. Alright, but Ravenous Rabble also a little bit rough here, so Guy's gonna be taking a bunch of damage here. Alright, so we're starting the game pretty low, it looks like. And it looks like Moises also has a Astral Bridge in hand here. Which I think he can just like play to get the spell off the top right. So Astral Bridge, I think, is dealing like an extra 1 damage here, basically. So we just get another like ponder, which is definitely like a little bit annoying. All right, but no AB makes sense. And then we'll go ahead and looks like just send an extra 2 here. Yeah, so Kai is definitely getting like pretty low here, but we do still have like the quick dodge for the Gone in a Flash turn. But it looks like we pondered into a Gone in a Flash there. I don't know if you all saw that. Let's see if we can go back to. So we pondered into a Gone in a Flash on Moises' side. So that's a little bit rough because if Kai sends King Shark there, then we basically will whiff basically because the Gone in a Flash will be in Arsenal. So unfortunate ponder there. Like if that Gone in a Flash ends up being like drawn and we just like Arsenal the Fate, this could be like a very different game. But looks like we drew a red there off the top. Okay, we have a 3. Okay, so now we can kind of like fix this hand. So now he has a choice. Okay, so now this is really interesting. We actually have the choice between a lot of different harpoons here. I don't know if you can see. So we have a shallow water, it looks like a battering bolt, and then 2 King Shark harpoons. So I think there's pros and cons to basically any harpoon here. The downside of the shallow water is obviously that Moises has Crown of Province, so that's really rough. Basically means you can just like sink the arsenal, and then that's brutal. King Shark is, I think, pretty solid here in the fact that you get the added like harpoon text, so you can like potentially hook this. But obviously we know that there's a Gone Flash in Arsenal, so sending King Shark is really rough there. And then I think there's also the battering bolt here, which hindsight is like obviously 2020 or whatever. But there's a lot of upsides to actually sending the battering bolt here, just because it does prevent you from getting comboed this turn. So it means that they can't do like a crazy like Gone Flash line on you. So given that you're like pretty low, I think there's arguments for like basically the choice really here is between like King Shark and Battering Bolt. I think if you're kind of playing it a little bit safe, you maybe just end up setting the Battering Bolt here just because it means they cannot Gone in a Flash combo you like no matter what they do, right? I think that like Battering Bolt tends to be a little bit stronger on average than King Shark, but King Shark also has like a lot of merit in the sense that if you draw the Gone in a Flash, then you still get to like hit that anyway. So I think personally, I'd probably opt to send the battering bolt here, but I think I know what Kai does. So unfortunately, I think Kai sends the King Shark here, which is a little bit punishing for sure. I don't even know if that's like necessarily wrong though. It just is like a riskier line because if you don't hit on King Shark and you leave your opponent with like a huge Gone Flash turn, then that's super bad, right? All right, but he's going for the King Shark. So the King Shark could still like end up being good here, even if it is supposed to be like a Gone Flash turn. But we'll kind of have to see here. All right, we're pitching the battering bolt too. I almost like the idea of like trying to keep the battering bolt. I think I try to like have a little bit more bias towards battering bolt in this matchup, especially if they're on Gone Flash combo. Okay, so it looks like Kai's actually going to pitch slightly differently there. Okay, so keeping the battering bolt there maybe makes sense. Although I do like the idea of maybe just getting rid of that King Shark or like trying to overpitch that somehow. Because like leaving a red in hand is definitely like a little bit suspect. But I guess there is like the upside here of you get to like discredit cheating, but I think the cheating is like pretty much like always hitting here anyways. I guess Moises is on some number of D-reacts here. And it looks like he will have to pitch to the Ataya, which is definitely pretty annoying. So maybe the King Shark actually ends up being like kind of fine here. I think the King Shark is definitely fine. I think the only thing I would maybe consider is just trying to keep the battering bolt in arsenal, which I can't really tell. Okay, it looks like he kept the battering bolt in hand. Okay, so that was, I think, a little bit of a rough sequence there. So the unfortunate thing about like keeping a red harpoon in hand is like it kind of like ruins your hand for next turn. So I actually really liked like over pitching the red harpoon there, so like we don't have it in hand, so that we can like just draw deeper towards our like buffs and other kind of like more impactful cards. I wouldn't be surprised if Kai just ends up blocking 3 with like a King Shark here or something. And then we get like the Sigil Brilliance bounce or whatever. But definitely makes like a lot of sense to try to prioritize the battering bolt from this position, just because like we do know about this Gone Flash, so the Gone Flash is definitely going to hurt quite a bit. All right, now that Kai's seen the Gauntlet Flash, it's definitely like maybe like a little bit too late, but you can still at least try to like prioritize the battering bolt here, which I think is pretty smart. So just trying to not leak a ton of damage off the Gon there, I think makes a lot of sense. All right, we're sending 10 here. I feel like there's maybe still some merit to hooking there, but again, it is really suspect when your opponent is on presumably 6 to 9 D-Reacts or something like that. So I definitely still understand the choice to like not hook here. But yeah, we definitely need to like try to not just like blow up to this Gauntlet Flash turn here, which it looks like we might be doing given that we see Echo Flash, Astral Bridge, all that fun stuff. I imagine Moises is probably just going to go and cycle this Echo Flash for additional 2 here. So we pop the Quiver. Okay, pad the life total makes sense. And what was the draw there? I think it was like some kind of shock, it looks like. Didn't really see exactly which one it was. All right, looks like we draw another Echo Flash, which is maybe not the best draw there. All right, looks like he's just going to pop the bracers here. So that will let him actually cycle one of these instants that he wants to kind of get rid of. So we pretty much have like a near optimal Gauntlet Flash turn here, looks like. So Kai's going to go ahead and pop the quick dodge trench, but unfortunately, I don't think we really have like a great way to like interact with this Gauntlet Flash turn. Probably just going to unfortunately have to eat a bunch of damage here, especially if we want to like end up sending anything on the next turn. All right, so they're going to pop their Greaves and their Knocker. All right, popping the Astral Bridge. Oh, hitting the Sigil off the top there is also really rough. Astral Bridge is such a silly card. Just like getting, you basically get like +7 value there or something like that. Like because you just get to like bounce the Gauntlet Flash. It's kind of crazy. All right, but pretty disgusting Gauntlet Flash turn, especially given that the rest of the hand's like significantly less good, I guess, than just Astral Bridge hitting Sigil off the top. All right, so Kai at least still gets a little bit of value here out of the quick dodge, or he's going to get a lot of value this turn out of the quick dodge. But yeah, this is pretty rough that we like didn't stop the Gauntlet Flash turn, which is pretty unfortunate. It's kind of like the way you typically like lose to a Cilio is it's like, what is this, like turn 2 or turn 3 basically, and they just like kind of find the combo. Actually, it might be like turn 4. It's like been very few turns basically. Like they found it within the first like half of the game. So I think it's about average. All right, but if we do actually get to keep the hand here, I don't know if you're paying attention. We have 2 blues, a big game trophy shot, and a swell there. So it's definitely a hand that converts super well, at least on offense here. But the question is whether or not we're actually going to get to that point, which is a little bit scary here. I think Moises is thinking like what to do with the rest of this hand because like we do have the Echo Flash, which is like a little bit weird. All right, discarding the Echo Flash here to just send an extra 1. Okay, it looks like he's just going to draw into a random Express Lightning or whatever, Entwine Lightning. Looks like we're ending this turn maybe on a Comet Storm Collision or something. I'm kind of surprised we don't just go like Entwine Lightning into like Gauntlet Flash or something and then Arsenal the Comet Storm Shock just to like close the game out. I think that's probably what I like the best here. Just go 0 for 4 into 0 for 4. She'll basically put Kai to 3 unless he wants to like give more cards here basically. I think I kind of like the idea of just like blocking with the swell just to like kind of pad the life total a little bit, but it might be so low that it doesn't really matter. Oh, okay, this is a weird line. He's gonna go for pitching the trophy shot to quick dodge, which I don't know if I actually like that line. I kind of like the idea of just blocking with swell because like trophy shot is one of your best ways to like actually go um like positive on offense, right? It's like going +4, just trying to hit like a random blue or yellow off the top, and then trying to send. I think you have a red arrow in Arsenal, so it's like 14 if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I could have forgotten the Arsenal, but I don't necessarily think I like pitching the trophy shot there. I kind of like the idea of just blocking with like swell or something. We'll see how this ends up working. Maybe he's just trying to like high roll a blue off the top, but I don't know how much that actually ends up doing. We'll kind of see what ends up happening here. I don't think this is necessarily like a bad play. I just would like to keep the trophy shot just because like we are kind of in kind of like danger territory, so we need to like roll as hot as we kind of can, right? I feel like the upside of swell is like a little bit less impactful than the upside of like trophy shot. I think trophy shot is just like on the whole kind of just a better card. It looks like he's gonna go for the tipple line here. Interesting. So starting the game with an additional, or starting the turn with 1 damage, but it's like a little bit dicey here because like if he doesn't find the blue on the top, then it's pretty rough. So we need the swell to hit here if we're kind of going for it. Ooh, okay, 3 oak on top is not bad though. So we don't have to hit off the swell, but we functionally kind of get a swell here. So this is still good. 3 oak, as it turns out, still pretty good card. All right, then we go for the 3 oak here. All right, we draw enough blues, which is good. And then the question is, I guess, what is in the arsenal? I think it's just a red arrow, like a battering bolt or something, if I am not wrong. Okay, there's the battering bolt. Sure, makes sense. I still kind of like the idea of trying to send the additional +4 there on that turn, because like you can do like swell into +4, which would makes it like 17 or whatever. And given that it's battering bolt, you're not getting like the big game trophy shot on hit, but you're still getting like the +4, which is really good. It looks like this battering bolt is threatening. It looks like an astral bridge and a sigil assault, or it looks like basically the whole hand there. I think there's one card that is not in, or one card that is in action in that hand, so that's very good for us. So yeah, this battery bolt could actually end up doing a lot of work here. At least forces the Acilia to kind of play out all the cards, which is still pretty reasonable. Let's see what the Acilia actually kind of ends up doing here. It looks like he's maybe just going to pop Astral Bridge in response. All right, Ghana Flash getting banished on top is probably fine. All right, so the hand has been dumped. We are putting Kai functionally down to 5 here, which is very scary because it means that Comet Storm Shock in Arsenal is going to be pretty devastating. All right, Sigil Brilliance will pop, so he'll draw a card, and it looks like we can maybe just close out the game here with a Comet Storm Shock for just 5 here because we don't have any AB over there. So unfortunate way to kind of end the game there. But I think that's like kind of how the Acilia matchup goes. Sometimes like you just like end up choosing the wrong harpoon in a given situation, and that can just like kind of make the difference there. I think it was kind of unfortunate that we saw like the Ponder gave Moises the Ghana Flash there, but unfortunately not too much you can kind of like do from that scenario. I think also the Astral Bridge like hitting Sigil off top was just like super rough. So I think Kai actually like played that like pretty well. I think there's definitely some like micro optimizations after that first like kind of like arrow whip where you can like maybe try to send a little bit more damage to kind of close the game. But it looks like it like wouldn't really have mattered there because we just like kind of needed them to not find the Ghana Flash as fast as they did. So a little bit unfortunate, I think, for Kai, but still pretty impressive performance making it to top 4. And I think like given Kai's I think Kai, this is like not the first time I think he's top 8. I think he's like top 8 at least a couple other things. So I think Kai's still like really good pilot here, and I think he played it pretty well, I would say. Just kind of like look for opportunities to kind of like just send more damage or like take kind of grittier lines. I think that's like kind of the only thing I saw that game, those 2 games basically was like A couple opportunities I think to just like use your gold, try to send a little bit more damage, basically. But yeah, overall, Kai played it super well, so very impressive showing at the AG Open. And thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. And a special thank you to all the folks who decided it would be a good idea to give us $2 on Patreon. We really appreciate the support, but it's obviously never required.